All right, Councilmember Jaime Gauthier, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So last week, you introduced a couple pieces of legislation that's a continuation of the work you've been doing for a while now. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what are kind of the nuts and bolts we're talking about here?
Sure. So last week I was excited to introduce phase two of my Defying Displacement campaign. You might remember that last year I originally launched this campaign. The first phase of it included several bills. We created the new low-income property tax freeze program. We cracked down on Section 8 voucher discrimination, and we also mandated that funds that developers send to the city through the density bonus program to build affordable housing has to go to the actual housing trust fund. So this next phase of the Defying Displacement campaign is all about cutting red tape to make sure that we can produce and develop more affordable housing. So there are several pieces of legislation that go with that. First, we want to make sure that we can get zoning permits for affordable housing projects faster. So we want there to be a 5-day turnaround from the Department of Licenses and Inspection for affordable housing projects in particular. We want to allow affordable housing projects to be able to get an accelerated hearing at ZBA. And we want to make sure that we can codify or document commitments that developers are making around affordable housing to registered community organizations and ZBA. So lots of times we'll see developers come forward and they'll get approvals for their projects largely because they're promising affordable units. But, you know, most times that's like a handshake, right? We want to be able to, actually give an approval based on an affordable housing commitment explicitly. And we want that to be documented in a proviso or a deed restriction so that we can hold developers accountable for developing what they said they would do to benefit our community. And so this whole first section of bills is about preferencing affordable housing projects because they are so critically needed in our city. We know that we are in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. At our current pace, it would take us about 2 centuries to develop the amount of affordable housing we actually need. At the same time, Mayor Parker has pledged to deliver a plan to develop 30,000 housing units in the city of Philadelphia over the next 3 to 4 years. I think my bills are a complement to that. If we are really going to build 30,000 units, we're going to have affordable housing projects move through our system in a way that's faster, more efficient, and cheaper. And that's what this first set of bills will do. The next part of our second phase of Defying Displacement is around what I call bonus units. We want to allow people to create bonus units. Some people call them accessory dwelling units by right in the council districts where they are allowed, because we think that bonus units are a great tool to help our homeowners age in place or to help homeowners to afford their housing costs in a better way than they can currently. So for instance, if you imagine I'm an elderly person, I've been living in my home for some time. I live in a huge home in, I don't know, Walnut Hill or East Parkside, and it's too much house for me because currently I live by myself. I could create a bonus unit that I could move into. It doesn't change anything about the outward appearance of my house, but it allows me to have a unit that's more fitted for me inside my house, and my adult children can move into the rest of the house, maybe with their children, right? So that allows me to age in place in my community and also get some support from my family. I own a big house in West Philadelphia or Southwest, and I'm having a lot of trouble paying my bills and taking care of my expenses. I can create a bonus unit, which is an income earning opportunity for me and also an affordable housing opportunity for someone else in the community. Now, currently, there are 4 council districts where bonus units units or accessory dwelling units are allowed, but you have to go through the zoning process. And for the typical homeowner, the zoning process is complicated, it's lengthy, it's expensive, and that's an incredible barrier to me creating a bonus unit in my home. So much so that with the current laws, we've only had 10 bonus units developed in the past 10 years. We want to allow everyday homeowners to get in on the game of creating affordable housing in a way that's really easy, right? And that's also a way that helps us to get to our goal of 30,000 housing units over the next 4 years or so. So that's what this next phase of Defying Displacement is all about: cutting the red tape, making it easier to develop affordable housing, and putting, our laws where our mouth is, right? We say that we want affordable housing. We have to make sure that we're preferencing affordable housing and making it easier for developers and homeowners and just regular people to deliver it to our communities.
And one of the things that you mentioned there that this legislation is going to do is sort of mandates when a developer says, well, we're going to do X amount of
Yeah.
affordable housing. It has to stick now, because in the past, they could say something like, well, cost overruns or something, or they would just, I had people say to me, we just didn't do it. You know, uh,
Yeah.
uh, you promised you. So now it's nice to see that they're going to be held accountable for this, which they hadn't been before.
Absolutely. Two things we're trying to do with this particular law. One, affordability, housing affordability is not really a part of the criteria for a zoning variance, right? But a lot of times that's why community members are agreeing to the variance. We want to make it part of the criteria that, you can get a positive zoning decision because you're offering something that's beneficial to the community. However, on the other side, we want to hold you accountable for actually delivering that. So I think this is a win-win.
Yeah. And you did talk about this a little bit, but I just want to reemphasize it a little. What does this mean for people with lower incomes who are looking to say, okay, now it's time, we want to buy a house, we have an expanding family. How can they look at this and say, okay, this is good for me?
They can look at this as our city doing what is in our control to bring more, to make it easier to develop affordable housing in Philadelphia. We can't control a lot of things. We can't control construction cost, for instance, but we can control our laws, our processes, and cut down on the amount of bureaucracy that's involved with the development of affordable housing. I certainly don't want to be the one to have to go back to my constituents and say, the reason why we don't have enough affordable housing is because we just have too much bureaucracy in the city of Philadelphia. So that's what this is all about. And then the second piece is almost like democratizing development, right? Why should big developers be the only ones able to build generational wealth off of development, right? I can develop this bonus unit that doesn't change the exterior of my property in a way that's going to sort of rattle my neighbors, but does allow me to have an income opportunity, income earning opportunity, and contribute to the amount of affordable housing in our city. So this is making it easier for developers and homeowners alike to add to Philadelphia's supply of affordable housing.
And we definitely need that. So, I know this is a really busy time, not just because it's generally a busy time, the spring, but with everything else that's going on, it's been even busier and more fraught,
Yeah,
maybe I'll say.
yeah.
I know we're a little early to talk about this, and I know council members really don't have everything sorted out yet for what they'd like to see in the upcoming budget, because it hasn't been presented yet. But what are just a couple, generally speaking, maybe a couple things you're keeping an eye on, or generally, what would you like to see?
Sure, I'll give you sort of three buckets. First, words cannot adequately describe how troubled I am about what's coming down from the White House as it relates to immigration, as it relates to the criminalization of immigrants in our country, as it relates to xenophobia. And, I think we have to stand up for our immigrant neighbors, and we have to stand firm that we are not going to allow hardworking members of hardworking contributors to our our city to be just terrorized by the federal government, whether it's President Trump or anybody else. And so one thing I think we have to invest in this budget season is pro bono legal defense. We recently had a hearing that was hosted by Councilmember Rue Landau. We heard from the Defenders Association about how ready they are to stand up for people, to make sure that people know their rights, to make sure that they have legal protections, and they're going to do that through an expansion of pro bono legal defense for immigrants in our city specifically. I think it is urgent that City Council fully fund that operation. So that's going to be something that I push for in the city budget and hope to have the support of all my colleagues. You can always count on me to push for funds for affordable housing in the city budget. That's not going to change this year. We are always fighting for more funding for what I call preservation, the preservation of affordable housing. Lots of folks will remember the UC Townhome saga, right? And how we had this low-income housing development that was backed by a time-limited subsidy, but when that subsidy expired, the owner just wanted to basically kick those tenants out on the street. UC Townhomes was a very high-profile example of that, but we have thousands of these types of housing units that are backed by time-limited subsidies, and we need money to actually help affordable housing providers acquire those housing units before they expire so that we can keep them in service as affordable housing. That's a big priority of mine. I'm always fighting for more rental assistance funds. On a monthly basis, the third district alone has a $16 million rental gap. That's the difference between what people are earning and what their actual rent is, right? And to the extent that we can give people even small amounts of money to keep them in their homes, that keeps them out of the homeless serving system, that keeps them off of the street, that keeps them in their homes where they can be healthy and safe. That's very important. And the rental gap on a citywide basis is $900 million annually. So this is a big problem in the city, but when we have rental assistance funds, we're able to keep a lot more people in their housing units. And I'm also very focused on youth criminal justice. I have the Juvenile Justice Services Center in my district. We've been, the Inquirer, for instance, has been doing a lot of great reporting about not only the conditions at the site, but also how much we detain young people, more than a lot of other places in the country. And so what I'm focused on is, one, making sure that the young people in that facility are being treated fairly, educated fairly, and supported, but also that we are able to have good oversight. So my office has been a great supporter of our youth ombuds, and we want to make sure that that office has as many resources as it needs to give great oversight to a facility where our precious young people are detained, right? And then we also want to see more funding go towards diversion, because detention of a young person, imprisonment of a young person should be the last option. We need to invest in resources within our communities to make sure that young people are able to grow, that they are able to connect to opportunity, and that they're not just doomed to a particular way of life because they made a mistake or had a bad day. So those are some of the things that I'm pretty focused on, but I'm also working with my team to sort of refine our list for budget.
And I'm going to editorialize a little bit because I can.
Yes.
That hearing that Councilmember Landau held, and you participated a lot in that hearing, was really important just for people to see, hey, somebody in government here is trying to at least tell you what we're looking at, and I think that was crucial. And I think all the things you've talked about really touch on that too, because these are the things people want to hear about. So what I'm going to do now is throw it over to Denise Clay Murray here on Philadelphia Hall Monitor.
Thank you, council
Hi,
member, for
Denise.
joining us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
My question, and it kind of bounces back to what you were talking about in terms of affordable housing. One of the problems that we've always had with affordable housing in this city is no one can define it. It's kind of like obscenity with the Supreme Court. I can't define it, but I'll know what it is when I see it. What is affordable? If I'm looking for affordable housing in Philadelphia, what do I have to do to know that I have access to affordable housing?
So the reason why I think it's so hard to define is because it has to be affordable to you, right? There's no sort of one answer. It has to be affordable to the particular person. The generally accepted definition for what is affordable is housing for which you're not spending more than 30% of your income on whatever your income is, right? That's like the generally accepted principle. But many people in Philadelphia spend way more than 30% of their income on their housing costs, which means you're cost burdened. Um, Affordable housing, and when we're talking about specific rents or housing prices, it is mostly marked by an index called AMI, or Area Median Income. Those definitions come down from the federal government, and most localities follow AMI because the federal government is the largest funder of affordable housing. So their funding drives what is sort of defined as affordable housing. AMI, or Area Median Income, is a pretty broad scale. In Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia region, AMI also includes the Collar counties, so it can be quite high. So, for instance, 100% of area median income for a four-person family in the Philadelphia region, I believe, is about $112,000. But most Philadelphians make nowhere near that, right? And so when we're talking about what the average Philadelphian can afford, it's generally at a much lower level on the AMI scale. When I first came into office, I did a study on the affordable housing in the third district. And what I found was that the average person in the third district is at about 34% of AMI. So think about that 100% number and think about the 34% number where, the average person in my district is. And so when developers are coming to me to pitch affordable housing projects, and they're coming to me to do a project at 80% or 100% or 120% of AMI, I'm constantly pushing them lower and lower and lower down that scale because I know that's what my people can afford.
Now, with the changes going on in Washington and anymore, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh God, what am I gonna do? Affordable, you made the point that affordable, a lot of the money for affordable housing comes
Yeah,
from the federal government. Are you
yeah,
concerned about what
yes.
that means for Philadelphia?
100%. Last week, when Trump issued an executive order in a memo saying that he was essentially shutting off all federal grants and loans, I was terrified. That would have been disastrous for our city. It would have been disastrous for our city government, our state government, nonprofits across the city and state that are providing vital social services to people all over the city and state, to our hospitals, to our research institutions, and housing would have definitely been impacted. Just to give you a small slice of how important federal support is to affordable housing here in Philadelphia, a lot of people know that the West Park housing development is getting renovated, for instance. That is one of the last high-rise public housing towers in Philadelphia. It is badly in need of renovation. We have a plan that's underway to renovate the entire site. It's going to be beautiful. Not only are we going to replace all 327 public housing units, we're going to add almost 700 more housing units, the majority of which will also be affordable. The federal government gave us a grant for $21 million that is going into that project. If you look further in Southwest Philadelphia at Bartram's Village, another public housing development that is badly in need of renovation, the Biden administration gave us $50 million to go into a beautiful renovation of that site, right? These funds are going to help us secure affordable housing, quality affordable housing for decades to come in areas that, to be frank, are gentrifying. So we have to put a stake in the ground and make sure that working class families can continue to live in these areas as they change. Trump's executive order would have cut all of that. And you know, I'm not even talking about the millions of other dollars that go into transit and our street infrastructure. It just would have been a disastrous situation. And so, yes, I'm incredibly worried about the president's lack of care for communities like ours, and what that will mean for us. But I'm also even more determined that we have to do more to shore up these dollars locally and at the state level, in case we're in a situation where we have to depend on ourselves because we have a president that we cannot depend on.
Okay. Over the weekend, a group of young people, including a Temple University student, they were on campus impersonating in immigration and customs enforcement agents. And they went to a business on Cecil B. Moore Avenue, tried to get into one of the dorms at Temple, and they were, saying they were ICE agents. Now, most of Philadelphia's universities have large international contingents, and you have two of those universities, Drexel and Penn, in your district. In light of this, have you talked to the folks in security or the presidents of these of Penn and Drexel to kind of give them a heads up and to say, okay, what are you going to do about this? What do you need from me?
I do believe that we sent the information over to them when we heard about the Temple situation, but I haven't had an explicit conversation with them as of yet. But we are in communication with Penn about a lot of other things that are related to some of what we've seen coming down from the White House.
Okay. Do you think that, because like I said, Philadelphia has a lot of international students that come here. Do you think that the fact that Philadelphia appears to be one of the places that's being targeted by immigration and customs enforcement, well, do you think that'll make people rethink whether or not they come here to go to school? And if so, how does that affect those universities? Because that's probably a nice chunk of their budget.
I hope not. And I hope that that doesn't impact people's decision to come here and study. But it's also more of a reason for every public official and community member to affirm that we are a welcoming city, we are a sanctuary city, and we're not going to stand for this foolishness. We're just not. This is the time to really stand on that point. And it's about students, but it's also about our broader community. I represent a district that where thousands of immigrants live, students and adults, right? People from various parts of Africa, people from Bangladesh, many African and Caribbean and Asian people who've immigrated from their countries are proud to call the 3rd District their home. My own mother immigrated to Southwest Philadelphia from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I would not be me if that hadn't happened, right? And so I am very firm on the point that we're not going to stand for this. We're going to make sure that people know their rights. We're going to make sure that we stand with our immigrant neighbors, and we're going to affirm that we as a city welcome immigrants, students, adults, all of the above.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to give you back to Larry McGlynn, and you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5.
All right. Thank you, Denise. And Councilmember Gauthier, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to talk with y'all. Bye-bye.